Trump declared war. Ladies and gentlemen, President Donald J. Trump has declared war. The United States is now at war. I'm very glad about this, although, as you probably know, I'm against resolving disputes with weapons.
You see, for more than 10 years, the violent left-wing terrorist group Antifa has called Portland, Oregon, its main stronghold. And they have actually acted with complete and absolute impunity. They have taken many innocent lives and caused tens of millions of dollars in property damage. And at best, all they got was a light punishment because they were protected by all the radically progressive politicians.
But at one moment, everything changed. The President of the United States signed one of the most significant executive orders in the history of our country.
At the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, I am assigning Secretary of War Pete Hegseth.
Notice, not the Secretary of Defense, but the Secretary of War.
Pete Hegseth will provide all necessary troops to protect war-torn Portland, Oregon. And any of our immigration and customs enforcement facilities that are under attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists.
A few days ago, the United States government, the White House, recognized the Antifa group, the paramilitary wing of the United States Democratic Party, as a local terrorist organization. From that moment on, all participants, all accomplices, all financiers, and even people who knew about their plans and didn't report them to the authorities became criminals facing long prison sentences. The terrorists themselves can easily be sentenced to 30 years, and those who helped or knew but didn't report it can get up to 20 years. Of course, the more an individual is involved in the crime or its preparation, the harsher the punishment, as they say.
Friends, he's really doing it. President Trump has just declared war. Antifa. And not only is he sending troops, by the way, these are the United States Armed Forces, but he has also authorized them to use full force. The kid gloves are coming off. And now he has decided to put an end to all this left-wing radical domestic terrorism once and for all by any means necessary.
By any possible means, including shooting terrorists and accomplices.
This also means that all radically progressive politicians who helped and incited these Antifa terrorists can finally be held accountable, as well as all the people who financially supported Antifa. As Pam Bondi just wrote on Truth Social, I have witnessed ongoing violence against immigration and customs enforcement officers across our country. The Department of Justice will not stand idly by in the face of such lawlessness. I am sending Department of Justice agents to immigration and customs enforcement facilities and locations where immigration and customs enforcement is under attack, as directed by me, to protect federal agents, safeguard federal property, and immediately arrest anyone involved in any federal crime. Per President Trump's recent executive order, I'm also directing joint anti-terrorism task forces nationwide to stop and investigate all organizations and individuals involved in domestic terrorism, including repeated acts of violence and obstruction against federal agents.
That means the Army and armed units of the Department of Justice went to Oregon to restore order. But you were told not only that they would fight the gangs who shoot, cause riots, throw stones, and so on. Trump and his administration are also going after those who are behind them. Trump's administration is behind them.
Whether you are a former FBI director, a former head of the intelligence community, or a current government official,
a state or local elected official, or a billionaire funding organizations, everything will be considered to prevent Donald Trump from coming to power. We will investigate you and put an end to the abuse of power for personal gain. The two-tier justice system will end. And Director Patel and I, Todd Blanche, are working hand in hand with our incredible intelligence community. Tulsi Gabbard, John Radcliffe, non-stop around the clock. People will be held accountable.
Everyone who broke the law will be brought to justice. Regardless of rank, name, status, or age, everyone is equal before the law.
I know it's easy to say that nothing is happening and that we haven't seen enough arrests yet, but it's also important to remember that Trump returned to the White House just 9 months ago and that it takes time to build airtight legal cases. I think we'd all just like to start putting some of these people in jail, but if we want to be sure the charges really hold up, that means building airtight cases, which actually means sifting through mountains of documents to gather all the evidence. But you know what? On that note, look at this.
Brennan, Obama, Monaco, all of them.
Conspired, all of them.
Worked together to try to sabotage, undermine, destroy democratic institutions.
And
The structures of this country. The Russiagate scam, the Russiagate conspiracy, and all the attacks on our freedoms associated with it. Dawn raids, arrests of innocent Americans, spying on President Trump's company and staff, removing his national security advisor, one fake accusation after another, the special counsel, all of it was a relentless attempt to overthrow the government that the American people voted for. I can't find words strong enough to condemn the behavior of these conspirators, these rebels.
We don't have such short memories that we can forget what the Socialist Party, which for some reason calls itself democratic, did to us when they were in power. Although it's hard to find anything less democratic than this Komsomol fascist organization. Gentleman, Stephen Miller, whom I just showed you, is, let's say, the second most important person in the president's administration after Susan Weiss. He will never say the term conspirators and list names like Obama and his associates. Is there a case that will be initiated against these conspirators? And this definition, this accusation, would not include, and he would not have any proof that there was a conspiracy. So Obama, Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and others will be tried as conspirators. That is, at least that's what they will be charged with. Which leads, ladies and gentlemen, well, to a 10, as they say, to 10 years in prison, I think, without the right to pardon, or even in special cases up to 20 in confiscation of property. Convicted rioters and conspirators lose, if they had a government pension, any benefits, and they are never allowed to run for office or work in the government.
this word insurrection is very clearly understood and has a precisely defined meaning with constitutional consequences. So I'm telling you what's happening right now. The Trump administration is busy preparing a series of cases on conspiracy to commit insurrection in order to finally hold the far-left deep state accountable.
Dear and not so dear trolls, professionals and amateur trolls, you can fume with anger as much as you want. It has started. It's not going to start soon. It's not just starting, it has already started. And to both your scoundrels and your idiots, Kayuk. There's such a word, Kayuk. If you want, it's over for you. So it's over for you.
And we continue to follow the breaking news. Just recently, President Trump announced on Truth Social that he is sending troops to Portland, Oregon to protect immigration and customs enforcement facilities. Now, Portland is just the latest Democrat-run city where the president has either sent or threatened to send troops as part of his growing fight against immigration and crime.
So what is Antifa? Who are they? Where do they come from? And who funds them?
Portland, Oregon is the center of Antifa operations. Some believe that Portland may have the largest Antifa presence in the country, maybe even globally, since Antifa is not limited to the United States. It kind of split off from its European roots. That's where it originally came from. People like to say that Antifa is a completely decentralized organization, that it has no leadership, that it's kind of an amorphous group, but that's not what we're hearing. Antifa has foot soldiers. Then they have a military faction that trains the soldiers. And then there's the non-governmental organization funding mechanism, possibly the Soros, politicians, and the media who protect these people. The last few nights, these domestic terrorists have gone on the offensive, throwing Molotov cocktails at vehicles, including the tour bus of rapper Ice Cube. Ice Cube was minding his own business, visiting Portland, and this is what's left of his fancy bus. Friends, unbelievable. Last night, these people were launching smoke grenades at the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Detention Center in Portland, shooting fireworks at immigration and customs enforcement officers, and constantly attacking federal law enforcement and federal property. As far as we understand, the criminal conspiracy case has progressed much further than people realize. Pam Bondi launched this new joint anti-terrorism task force, this special operation specifically designed for Antifa. The group is focused on Antifa, identifying their members, accomplices, associates, and sponsors. And look, she says they are pursuing the most serious charges available against all of their participants.
We are seeing a new era of political violence. Assassins have tried twice to kill President Trump and have tried to kill Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. In Minnesota, lawmakers and even children present at the scene were cold-bloodedly shot in 2 separate incidents. And the killer targeted and killed our friend Charlie Kirk? A sniper shot 3 people at a Texas Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility. And now more than 200 violent rioters were at a Chicago Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility, chanting, "Arrest Immigration and Customs Enforcement, shoot Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Otazinea." At least one of them had a weapon. We've seen this before in Portland and during the Los Angeles riots. These aren't peaceful protests, but coordinated attacks by radical extremists, and they end now.
You'd have no idea. You dine with them, everything seems normal. Then discover they've given those lunatics millions. Steve, could you comment on this?
Yes, sir. This is a very historic and significant day. This is the first time in American history that the government is making a comprehensive effort to dismantle democratic terrorism, to dismantle Antifa, to dismantle organizations that have committed these acts of political violence and terrorism. What we've seen, if you look, whether it's going back to the riots that started with Black Lives Matter and up to the Antifa riots, attacks on immigration and customs enforcement officers, doxing campaigns, and now political assassinations. These are not isolated incidents. This is part of an organized campaign of radical left-wing terrorism. It is structured, complex, well-funded, and well-planned. There is really nothing like this in the country right now.
I haven't seen anything like this in our country, I mean America, said Steve. There hasn't been anything like this. Other than Antifa, nothing else seems to exist. By the way, it reminds me of the Bolshevik combat squads led by Simon Ter-Petrosian, known as Kamo, and Yosif Djugashvili, known as Stalin, later on. The Raider squads were also led by people you know, such as Mikhail Frunze and Yakov Sverdlov. And at the Central Committee of the party, that is, in the center, directly under the supervision of Vladimir Ulyanov, who later took the pseudonym Lenin, there was a gang of raiders led by Vladislav Nevsky. I don't know if that's his real last name, or it seems, judging by the style, it also looks made up. Antifa is built on a similar principle, although the strategy is kind of different. It's essentially the same. The strategy is set centrally, while tactics are decided locally. The question is, has Antifa started to get nervous?
Then one of the most well-known public figures of Antifa, a sort of leader, Elisa Azar, just completely deleted her social media accounts, wiped them clean. They're worried, friends. They understand that the Trump administration is a special task force. The Department of Justice is serious now. They view these people as domestic terrorists and will charge them accordingly. Treat them as such.
I really hope they do it as broadly and as harshly as possible. They're taking some steps here, and they're making big moves, investigating what I would say were cases that were closed but never resolved. Unsolved mysteries, if you will.
But when you look at it, Logan, it's interesting because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are trying to restore the FBI's image. And when you look at these 3 cases, they should have been the kind that federal law enforcement could have solved quickly. Obviously, the decision on the Dobbs leak was handled by the Supreme Court Marshal, not the FBI. The White House case, considering all the surveillance cameras and security, should have been the kind in the White House. Law enforcement could have solved this case easily, especially since they had all the recordings on January 6.
Why was this hidden and why wasn't it investigated further? I think that's the more important question. And who leaked these documents? Those are the things. And not only who leaked the documents, but why wasn't it found out?
What can I say? We thought we would never see this day, but America has just witnessed the first mass arrests of domestic terrorists, and George Soros has broken his silence with a panicked statement that changes absolutely everything. So here we go, all right? I think that in many ways, September 25, 2025 will go down in history as the day when accountability finally came to America for what President Trump called America by radical left-wing terrorists. So, while millions of Americans were sleeping, federal agents were on the move, and the worst nightmare of the deep state just became a reality. So, if you don't know what's happening, President Trump right now, as we speak, is taking action against Antifa after years of chaos, destruction, and violence in our cities.
Well, after all, they are Antifa. That's what they call themselves because they're supposedly anti-fascists. But that's just a name, a wrapper, a cover. What's really inside?
Antifa? Yes, it's a very collective or specific set of ideas that believes in political violence to achieve its political goals. That's literally the definition of terrorism. So if you call Antifa just an idea, that's literally the definition or the idea of terrorism itself.
That's what a former member of the Antifa movement says.
When you first heard about this move from the White House, did you think, okay, this is to catch the people in black you see destroying the community? Or did you think something more? As I said in the introduction, it's to find the people who are funding Antifa.
That's really interesting because Antifa has several different sources of funding. One of the ways I remember from my time is that many people actually had jobs and funded themselves. I know there were several different ones, but I'm not sure exactly which. It's not GoFundMe, but there are sites similar to GoFundMe that organize fundraisers for Antifa activists to get them out of jail, to do all these things. I remember a few years ago, Representative Ocasio-Cortez supported people to donate for bailouts. I mean, those who were connected with Antifa. The author, Mark Ray, wrote Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. Tates actually donates part of the proceeds from his books to some unnamed organizations similar to Antifa. So definitely there are many different sources of funding, ranging from grassroots level to various fundraisers and companies.
Do you think this designation as a terrorist organization will make people think twice before joining Antifa or funding it? I'm asking you this based on your experience in this group, listening to and being around people. Do you think this will slow Antifa down in any way?
Well, actually, I wrote about this in The Hill a few years ago, I think maybe 5 years ago, that designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization would really have two effects. The first is that it would really help law enforcement target some of these terrorist cells. Second, it's about public relations, since Antifa calls themselves anti-fascists, making it seem like opposing Antifa means supporting fascists. But that's not true. Fighting Antifa means opposing political violence from any source. Because to a certain extent, and actually to a significant extent, many of these Antifa activists are themselves terrorists. They are themselves fascists. So labeling them as domestic terrorist groups really helps in the fight against Antifa in the field of public relations, because it really shows them for what they are. They are a domestic terrorist movement.
Now I will introduce you to a young woman journalist who spent 3 years with left-wing extremists and is writing a book about them. In addition, she has her own fairly popular podcast.
I really think these people are trying to overthrow the government. To protect the country as an institution, we sometimes must make sacrifices. This is a violent paramilitary faction of the far left. They really want to overthrow the federal government. I truly believe that they will try to do this at some point, and I think tough decisions need to be made to prevent it. What do they want? What is their vision? They want to overthrow the United States, creating a world without government, courts, police, or money, us. They want something like collective decision-making. So collective decision-making about who gets food, who gets energy. They don't want private property, so you won't own your home, you won't own your land. They don't want parents to have rights over their children. They want kids raised by the collective. Yes, they want to overthrow the government and abolish the Constitution, believing it's all rooted in capitalism. I have videos where they repeat this often. They want a Marxist society. That's their goal. They outgrew that once, but I think that time is over. Many on the far left were indoctrinated from age 5 through public schools. That's especially true for young people, since this material has been in schools for 20, 30 years. And I think that, many people have really overlooked what is being taught in schools and what is being integrated into these lessons. Because by the time these kids finish school, they're already used to this anti-capitalist, anti-assimilation ideology. Then you send them to college, where the real process begins with active recruitment. Many academics, college, and school teachers are in Antifa. I mean, teachers' unions play a key role in this. Teachers' unions are a huge part of the leftist movement. I see them on leftist organizing calls literally all the time. Honestly, I think holding congressional hearings on union political activities would be highly productive. Not just teachers' unions, all unions. Unions could become a major problem in advancing this far-left ideology.
I'm smart, right? But looks can be deceiving, can't they? Well, probably because of her appearance. That's why she was accepted in Antifa as one of their own. This is what happens when you confront Antifa. Watch now, you're about to see Antifa shooting at a federal building where federal employees are inside.
For those new here and for President Donald Trump, he learned about this only 2 weeks ago. Protesters and federal agents are clashing.
According
to United States law, everything within cities and states, the federal government has no right to interfere in cities and states. That's why Trump only talked about it. But the attack started on a federal building, then on other various federal facilities, on federal property, and on federal employees. And this gave Trump the opportunity to address this problem without breaking the law. But the Democrats, who for years have let Antifa burn, beat, and kill,
we will talk about prevention. We will talk about due process.
The Oregon delegation is sounding the alarm after spending more than an hour at the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Center in South Portland.
And we wanted to understand how some of their policies are structured.
So after 5 months of constant clashes, attacks on journalists, and injuries to federal agents, local residents in this area were begging for help. And then, after 5 months, suddenly Oregon officials decide, you know what? We're going to visit this federal building.
They didn't expect us. They toured us around and answered our questions in the conference room. Our point of view is this. The president says he wants to remove violent illegal immigrants. We're all for that.
Senator Merkley says the opposite is happening and that nonviolent people are being arrested or detained.
So, for those of you who don't know, these lawmakers went into this building and the whole building was attacked, windows were smashed, and the entire building was boarded up with plywood for protection. And the reason everything is blurred out is because there are very hateful things written on that plywood.
I can't even show you. So imagine these lawmakers show up and talk about, violent offenders. Meanwhile, the building they're in has been vandalized and destroyed.
I really hope that the people in Portland, Oregon, and in other cities of the United States of America where the Democrats, the Democratic Party, are in power, can see who is just pretending to do something, so to speak, and who is actually trying to save us from fascism, from communism, I don't know. Which came to us, as they say, under the mask of anti-fascism. This phrase is attributed to Winston Churchill, but he never said it. It came from a publication by American Senator Charles Long in the 1930s. Maybe Churchill repeated it at some point, but he did repeat it. Do you want to hear a bit more about Antifa? Well, from the same Karlin Borisenko, she calls herself Karlin Borisenko.
That we like the communist left side, that we don't want them to control everything. We'll have to set our other disagreements aside for now, and we can argue about that later, all right? Because we have a real enemy, and they're trying to overthrow the government, and they're dangerous, and they're brainwashing your children, and they're doing all sorts of crazy things. So welcome, Sarita, welcome to the dystopian nightmare. George Soros supports progressive and liberal, not far-left causes. So if you go to my website, which is called Code Air, I'll even open it. Wait. I'll open it to show you, and we can put the link in the chat. The left is a spectrum from corporate Democrats to radical revolutionary socialists, and we should view the left as a spectrum. If we don't do that, we won't understand what they're doing or planning next. Since all these different groups on the left flank behave differently, I have a framework to help people understand what I call the map of the modern left movement, which basically consists of 5 levels describing different groups on the left side. So the first level is the Democrats. These are people who put corporate interests above all else. They want to maintain capitalism. They are very pro-establishment. You won't see much change from the average Democrat. That's why it's so silly for conservatives to get angry at Democrats. I understand that they are your electoral opponent, but you have to realize that your average normal Democrat really doesn't pose that much of a threat. The Democratic Party is falling apart. After the Democrats, you have the second level, you might be the regular liberals. These are more likely to be kind-hearted people, those who support social causes. They are different from socialists and communists. In fact, socialists and communists openly say that they hate liberals all the time. After that come the progressives, and with the progressives, you start to cautiously approach the far left, although you're not quite there yet. Because essentially, progressives still want to preserve a capitalist environment in the country. Progressives are not trying to overthrow the government. They have very left-wing policies, but they are not trying to overthrow the government. All right, then you move on to the far left, where our democratic socialists and our revolutionary socialists are. Now, the difference between democratic socialists, such as the Democratic Socialists of America and the Working Families Party. The Democratic Socialists of America is the largest, which is why I use it as an example. The difference between the Democratic Socialists of America and Revolutionary Socialists is that they both want a post-capitalist society, but they have different ideas about how to achieve it. Democratic Socialists still believe in working through elections. They still nominate candidates, they still have functioning political parties, and they believe in getting into the system through elections, mostly for smaller local positions. But now we have Zohran Mamdani, who will become the next mayor of New York, and making small changes to the system in order to eventually abolish capitalism over time. Revolutionary socialists are completely different, because revolutionary socialists openly say, we don't believe in elections, we don't vote, we don't care about any of the parties, we don't want to put forward candidates, we don't believe in working within the system, we just want to overthrow the government. That's the difference. When people say that the Democratic Socialists of America are the farthest left, I think, oh, no, 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 no. The Democratic Socialists of America aren't rushing to overthrow the government. They want to work within the system, which is bad, but not as bad as those who call for violence. Thank you.
Karolinsa, with the Ukrainian surname Borisenko, you have personally given me a lot of useful information. Honestly, I didn't realize there was a difference between progressives and liberals. Everything else is clear. A Democrat, well, that's normal, as they say. They also sometimes say, so to speak, blue dogs. I don't remember where that came from, yeah. So they're blue, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe they're dogs, but blue, I don't know. So they're Democrats, that's their principle. So after all, they believe in helping the weak, you have to help them. They don't go any further, you have to help the weak. Liberals and progressives. From my point of view, that means the idea goes a little further. To help, you must take from those who earned. And democratic socialists or socialist Democrats think that everyone should have an equal share, no matter who earned it and who didn't. Well, naturally, along the way, we take a little for ourselves, right? And revolutionaries, that means shooting everyone, killing everyone, locking everyone up, robbing everyone. And then we'll see. So why should we think about the future now? It's in the future. Why think about it now when now is now? Here he is, the enemy. There is an enemy. Those who have money, I want to take it from them as quickly as possible so we can use it ourselves, so we can take advantage of it ourselves. I have 2 pistols and 2 comrades. We'll go, kill everyone, take everything, and then life will be wonderful. It would be good to send them all to Cuba or Venezuela or maybe to San Salvador, to prison, well, somewhere, but still probably Cuba would be better. Goodbye, see you again.